Hello quilt artisans, my name is Shonda and welcome to my channel Under the Needle Quilting and Crafts. So, a while ago I'm always looking at patterns. Quilting patterns, crochet patterns, I'm always looking at them. I love looking at patterns. Free, paid, all of them. And I was looking at crochet patterns and I came across some that kind of went on my short list that I would like to make, right? And one of them was this here, this crochet cardigan. This is by Jess over at the Make and Do crew. Another picture of the cardigan there. Now, it was a beginner cardigan, and I was like, I'm going to try it. And it was made with, I think the seller for me was that it was made with a yarn that I already had. So, it was made with this Lion brand comfy cotton yarn, which is like, I believe, 50% cotton, 50% acrylic. This is discontinued yarn. It's a 3DK, 392 yards of skein. Now, why am I doing this to myself? I don't know. The last crochet garment that or crochet wearable that I made, I started it in 2015 and I finished it in 2022. And it took one skein of Lion brand Scarfie. Lion brand Scarfie is 312 yards. So doing the rough math, it took me 7 years to do 312 yards. So this quilting project takes six plus skeins of 392 yards per skein. So I should have this cardigan done sometime by the time I'm 105. So I'm just going to check in as I work on this project. I have no idea how long it's going to take. It's going to be interesting to watch this back and see how long this takes. So I've started. She's got a great tutorial also. So there is a free pattern on her blog. And then there's a paid pattern that has a bit more detail and a bit more information. But she also does a tutorial that is free on YouTube for anyone to watch. So I have done 7 rows. I had to teach myself foundation half double crochet. Because one of the reasons why I don't like to make large items, well, other than the fact of how slow it is to make them, one of the reasons why I don't like to make larger items from thinner yarn is because working into that turning chain it's a pain in the neck. You know, you've got this long chain, this long chain, and I just don't really like that. And I knew that foundation crochet was a thing, and I had even looked at a class on Craftsy, and I think I had done a few stitches, but I never used it in any project ever. So she recommended it for this project. She had a great tutorial on her website that showed you how to, on YouTube, on her YouTube channel that showed you how to do it. So I did it. It was really easy to learn. The pattern is really easy. It's just half double crochets. The whole thing is just half double crochets. I love me a good half double crochet. The scarf that took me 7 years to make, all half double crochets. So I do have some stitch markers in. These are just for me. They're really not required for anything. I just kind of like to know where I'm at. These are just like motivators, right? Because each of these means that I'm 25%, right? So this is 40 stitches. I did a chain of 160. So there's my first 40. There's the second set of 40, so that's 80 stitches. So we're halfway through when we get to that stitch marker. And then here we're 75% of the way done, and then we're at the end. So that's just what I've been doing. I started this yesterday. So this is just going to be fun for me. This is not a challenge in any way, shape, or form. I'm not going to force myself to finish this if I don't want to. because it's going to be time consuming. I timed myself for each row, and if I can just pretty much just focus on the row and not move or do anything else, and I'm not stopping to fast forward or rewind something on my phone. But if I add in like little stuff like that, it's about 20 minutes per row. So I would only get 3 rows done in an hour. And the first step of this is 41 rows. So 41 divided by 3, that's going to be 14 hours of crocheting just for me to get the first 41 rows done to get to which part? Probably here, because it looks like right here is where we start decreasing. Yeah, looks like we start decreasing around here. So it's like 41 rows just to get to here, and then you start doing some decrease rows as you work up. So yeah, I'm just going to work on this as I do my other projects, and I just plan to check in periodically and show my progress and how things are going. Right now, I mean, it's been pretty easy because, like I said, it's just half double crochets. It's just time consuming. Every row takes 20 minutes. Whereas when I work on a blanket with, size 6 yarn, it goes like that, right? So, I don't know. I thought it would be nice to have like a more long-term project. So I've got a shorter-term project, which is a blanket that I've been working on with size 6 yarn and a 11.5 millimeter hook or 12 millimeter hook. That's just a quick project. It goes together quickly because the yarn is so large, and I'm not making a huge blanket. It's a smaller blanket. So, yeah, I'm excited about this, and we'll see if this is something that I can stick to. The last time I tried something with smaller yarn, I did not stick to it because it was just too much. It was this project here. It was an Afghan that I was working on, and my crocheting looks great. Like, I was really proud of the job that I was doing, but the way this project worked, there was just so much stitch counting. There was just so much stitch counting, and like every row, like a lot of the rows are different in this, and so I just kind of wanted something that was just like all the same stitch, or like an easy repeatable stitch. And so I'm gonna go with this and see how I fare. So that's it for today, and I'll check in when I get a little further. It'd be nice if it's January still. Wouldn't that be nice? We'll see. Okay, so it is January 10th. It is 3:26 p.m. and I am ahead of schedule. I am pretty proud of myself. I still have a long way to go on this cardigan. I don't know why I chose to use a DK weight thread, yarn for my first cardigan instead of doing something like in a bulky yarn that I could get done quicker. I guess the thought is if I can get through this, then anything else that I make with a thicker yarn, even a worsted weight yarn, is going to be faster. So I have finished my first skein of yarn. Okay, so this is 392 yards. I have finished my first skein. This is where I'm at. I have completed, let's see, 20, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26 rows, and I just ran out of yarn on my 27th row. Now, what I'm making right now is like the base of this thing. I'm making this. This section here is what I'm working on. And so basically the size that I'm making has 49 rows. And then there's like an additional, 41 rows. And then there's an additional 9 rows. And this is just for my particular size. There are additional 9 rows that have a decrease in them. And then once I get to that part, then I'm done with this rectangle. And then I have to build out these 3 pieces. So that's where I am. Again, ahead of schedule. My goal here, I'm really not trying to put a whole bunch of pressure on myself to get this done in any specific time. I just want to consistently work on it. Like, that's the only goal, is to just work on it consistently. That's it. And to hopefully maybe get it completed in 2024. I would like to get this cardigan completed in the year 2024. That would be great. So we'll see. We'll see. Right now I'm doing well. I was really trying for 2 rows a day, average, meaning some days I would do more, some days I would do less. But for these first 50 rows, I was looking at an average of 2 a day. So over the course of 25 days. So I am 6 days in. I think I started this last week, Thursday. Today's Wednesday of the following week. So I'm 6 days. 6 days in. So 6 days in, I should really only be 12 rows, which would be like somewhere here maybe. So I'm doing good. I'm doing good. I've been doing fine. My gauge is okay. This yarn is incredibly soft, which actually makes it harder a little bit to work with, because it just kind of wants to just fall. There's no stiffness or body to it. So you have to, like, physically hold your stitches and stuff like that. But it's super soft yarn. I'm not having any, I know with the blanket that I'm working on right now, it's acrylic. And, there does get to be like a rubbing on my fingers. Like, it does start to, you can irritate. It does start to have an irritation effect on the fingers. This yarn doesn't have any of that. Any of that. I have played around with my hook size quite a bit, and I've played around with my tension quite a bit. When I did my first 10 rows, I was a little short on gauge, and then when I got my when I got my first 10 rows done, my gauge was correct because it's 10 rows for 4 inches. So when I did the first 10 rows, I was pretty good, because I was like right at 4 inches. Then as I've gone on, it's gotten a little bit, it's just not quite as long as it needs. It's not quite as tall as it needs to be. So the width, my gauge this way is fine. My gauge for height is a little off. I'm not super worried about it. It's not off incredibly. So I'm not going to worry about it. I've been watching a lot of videos on blocking, and then also just this yarn, because there is a cotton component, it does stretch more on the sides. So my sides are way longer than, let me go to my middle. Let's see. So, try to show this here. I need to show it from this side. So that side definitely comes out longer than my middle piece. So the fabric has a lot of give and stretch. So I'm not going to worry too much. And I think it's just the edges just get handled more, and so they get stretched a little bit more. And so I'm not really concerned about the exact gauge here, because if I were to measure the center of my piece, I'm a little short on gauge. If I were to measure this end of my piece, the gauge is a little too long. So I figure as long as I keep the tension even, all things will work out. So I'm just going to continue to work these rows. I'm super excited to get this part done. Now I know I start doing a lot more sewing once I get to the end of the month. So I think one of the reasons why I'm getting so much done on this cardigan is because I'm not doing a lot of quilting right now, and it just leaves me with more time. So I'm just kind of taking advantage of this to kind of get things done. Saturday I'm not going to be home, so I'm probably not going to get anything done. On Saturday, I'm not gonna be able to do any crocheting probably. So there's that. But so far, so good. I do wish that I had done this using worsted weight yarn. I could have followed this same, or even a chunky 5. I could have followed the same pattern, and just the rows would have been different for the gauge. But I didn't do it because I'm just not experienced enough. When it comes to a quilt pattern, I know what I'm doing, and I can redo the math to use different stuff, right? I'm really good at quilt math. Crochet math, not so much. So I'm just going to follow this pattern and hopefully have something that I can wear in the fall. That would be great. If I have a nice cozy sweater I can throw on in late September, early October, that would be great. So I'm going to keep going on this, and I'll keep updating as I progress. So it is now Wednesday, January 17th. I am at my 2-week mark. So 2 weeks, I want it to be at 28 rows. 2 rows a day, 2 weeks, 28 rows. Well, I'm happy to report that I'm actually at row 42. So I'm a week ahead of schedule. I'm trying to stay there. This is where we are. So I did the first 41 rows, which are just half double crochets all the way across. And then row 42 is your first decrease row. And so that is why I have this little stitch marker here at the end to indicate that this was my first decrease row. And so you're going to basically decrease every other row for 9 rows. So, daggone fruit flies driving me crazy. Decrease every other row for 9 rows, and then I move on to the next piece. So, I mean, hopefully, at the rate that I've been going, 9 rows, 3 days, maybe? I'm going to really try to work on this tonight. I'm gonna really try to work on this tonight. I want to try to get. I've done, how many rows have I done today? 4 or 5 today already. Because I think I 40. I think I did 3 rows today, or maybe 4. But I think when I started today, I had worked row 39. So 40, 41. So I've done 3 rows today. So it would be kind of cool if I can get 3 more done. So that's what I'm going for. And I will check in again in a week and see where we're at. I just did that row in 14 minutes, less than 15 minutes. That's pretty good. On to the next. This is going to be row 48. This is 7 of 9 decrease rows. So I have 3 decrease rows left, and then I will begin making my front and back panels. So my piece will look like, again, we're working on this. So I have 3 more rows to go to get to here, and then I'll build out this piece, and then I'll build out this piece, and then I'll build out that piece. So I'm going to do a bit more crocheting, and I'll catch you guys up when I get a little further along. Okay, it is the next day. It is January 20th. Different day, same clothes. If you watch my channel, y'all know how I feel about these onesies, and I will wear the same one for like 3 or 4 days. Yes, I'm clean. In case you don't watch my channel, um, I I tend to, well, not I tend to, I shower at night, I go to sleep. In the morning, I put on the onesie, and I wear the onesie all day until it's time to take a shower, and then I take a shower, and then the next day the process repeats. I don't go anywhere. If I wear it outside, if I go places, then I will not wear it for the same number of days, of course. But, so, I was really pleased with myself yesterday. I finished the first 50 rows. Again, that's for my size. If you're doing a different size, you're going to have a different number of rows. But that's how many rows I had for my size. So I don't think I'm going to check in quite as much today because it just involves way too much editing. It took a long time to edit me doing those decreased rows and speeding all that up. So I don't think I'm going to do all that today. But I am now going to work on that first piece for the back. So I'm going to lay my piece down. I'm going to put on the YouTube video because it's a YouTube tutorial. I'm going to put the tutorial on. I'm going to take out my pattern and I'm going to make all my measurements across so I know where I need to make my stitches and attach my yarn and all that good stuff. And I probably will not update again until I have this piece completely done. So I'll have the 2 pieces on the side done for the front and then that section for the middle. And then I'll update when I'm done with that. It'll be interesting to see how many days that takes. I'm excited. Okay, so it is January 23rd. I am making progress on this sweater. I have completed the main sweater. So it's kind of hard to place it upright because the way that it's constructed, but so we have this main piece and then we have these 3 kind of pieces coming off here. This is going to be our front panel. This is going to be our back panel. And this is going to be our other, where'd you go? The other front panel. Now, some mistakes that I made. One, when I was attaching the yarn, so we do the first 41 rows, just half double crochets across. The next 9 rows, we work a decreased row every other row. And then once we get done with that, then we work these three panels, the 2 fronts and the 1 back. Now, when I attached the yarn to sew this piece on or crochet this piece and to crochet this piece, I attached my yarn in the wrong place. So I attached it on the wrong side. And it's just going to have to be okay. It's just going to have to be okay. Specifically, actually, no, I don't think not for the back, for the second front. I attached my yarn to the wrong side. I was supposed to attach it on this side and I attached it on the other side. So just be careful about that. I just wasn't paying attention to the pattern. But another thing that I had a problem with was when it says, it's kind of confusing when she puts the stuff about the stitch mark. Now for like I said, this is a free pattern, so I'm not giving anything away. For my size, it says to put your marker between the 27th and the 28th stitch. What is that? What do you mean between the 27th and 28th? In between the stitches? Like I've not heard it. I've always heard it, put it in the stitch marker. But reading through the pattern, I did figure out that I'm supposed to have these little front panel pieces are supposed to be 27 stitches for my size. So the stitch marker needs to go in the 28th stitch from the side so that you can make 27 stitches from the edge to the stitch marker. So that's that part. I did figure that part out. But the second part I did mess up. I didn't catch it in time. For my size, for the back panel piece, it says to put your stitch marker between the 44th and 45th stitches. But I put mine in the 45th, and it ended up not having enough stitches. When I looked at this pattern, when you're doing the back portion, for my size, I'm supposed to have 62 stitches going back and forth, and I didn't. I only had 58. So that had to do with where she said to put the stitch markers. So I'm not super worried. But you don't have to tiptoe, baby. Yeah, so I just don't know about that. So if I put the stitch marker in the 48th stitch or in the 47th stitch, like I'm not going to have enough. It's not going to end up being 62 stitches. When I put mine in, I think I put mine, I don't feel like counting now. Let's see, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 52, 33. I put mine in the 44th stitch. So by putting mine in the 44th stitch, from both sides, I ended up with 58 stitches in between. And so I guess just keep that in mind. I don't think it's going to matter all that much as long as you do things evenly. So I'll just say that. Now, I don't know if maybe like my stitch count was wrong or something. I don't know. I don't know. But I had the right number of stitches before I put my stitch markers in. So I don't really know. But I'm not really worried about it. Like I said, in the grand scheme of things, I don't think that is going to matter very much. And so I'm really not worried about it. Now, things I like about this pattern, the way my brain is set up, I like having a sense of accomplishment, and the way this pattern is made, there are constant senses of accomplishment, like milestones that you reach throughout the way, right? So my first milestone was finishing my first skein of yarn at around row 27, right? My second accomplishment was reaching that row 41 before we start the decrease rows, right? And then my third accomplishment was getting those 9 decrease rows done. And then my second skein of yarn was done. And then my third accomplishment, then this was accomplishment, building out that piece. That was a piece, that was an accomplishment. Then building out this piece, that was the back panel. That was an accomplishment. Like that was a box that I could mentally check off. So as I'm going through this sweater, I have the 41 rows, the 9 decrease rows, and then the 2 front panels and the 1 back panel. So I have those kind of 5 milestones, as if to say, I've accomplished something, which really kind of kept me motivated to keep going. I find that when I'm just doing a blanket, like if I was to do a blanket out of all DK weight yarn like this, I would have checked out by now because it just would have been back and forth rows. And once I got those first 41 rows done, I would have had to do that like 4 more times in order to get a decent sized blanket. But this was like in nice little manageable chunks. So it's been going well. I like this pattern so far. This went together way faster than I thought. I think I started on January 3rd. Today's January 23rd, so that's 20 days. Now I am on to the sleeves. So right now I still have to make 2 sleeves, of course. Then I have to make the collar. And then I have to make the 2 pockets. Then we have to block everything and then seam everything together. So I'm kind of excited to be onto the smaller pieces now. I had a doctor's appointment last week and I brought this with me and it was just too big to work on. So that's the only thing when you're working on something this big, you know, a sweater, it gets to a point where it's too big to work on. So that's where I was at with this. So I'm glad that this piece is done. This piece is behind me and I'm off to make the sleeves now. So I'm really excited about that. I don't know how long the sleeves will take. I do know that I am almost at the half point of my sweater based upon the amount of yarn that I've used. The size below mine, I'm making the 1X. The size below uses 6 skeins of yarn. My size uses 7, and the size above me, the 2X, also uses 7. So I know that that 7th skein, we don't really use that much of it, right? We use way less than half. And so this is where I'm at on my 3rd skein. So I'm almost done with my 3rd skein. So that's like an accomplishment. Like when I finish this skein, I'll know that I am like literally like almost at the halfway point as far as crocheting is concerned. So yeah, really excited. I don't know if I'm going to start the sleeves today or not. I probably will. My sew along, my quilt along starts on the 27th. So I'll probably try to do as much crochet as possible. However, I am going to be doing a live sew today. And so I might choose to work on my quilt instead of trying to crochet. So I haven't decided. But that's it for now. And I will check in when I've got more progress. Okay, so now it is January 29th. And I don't know why. I started my sleeve on January 24th. And somehow I said in that video that I was going to try to see if I could finish the sleeve that day. Well, of course, I did not finish the sleeve that day. And it was kind of naive of me to think that I would. Because I just wasn't thinking. I wasn't thinking. And, you know, since I'm anal and math brained, I went through and like added up the stitch count for this. And so it would be about 18 rows of the back and forth for the main sweater. So 18 rows of the back and forth for the main sweater for me, that's about how many stitches it took for me to make this sleeve. Now, given that, we're talking about 4.5 to 6 hours worth of crocheting for me at the speed of which I crochet. So I don't know what in the world made me think that I was going to finish that day. I did not. I finished my sleeve last night. Here it is. It is bigger than it's supposed to be. So one thing I did do, I don't know that if I mentioned this or not since I've been filming this over time, but I did buy the paid pattern. Okay. Once I picked up my crochet needle, my crochet hook, and I started that main sweater and I got going, like when I got those first like 50 rows and I knew that I was going to commit to making the sweater, I went ahead and paid for the pattern. Just because that's just something that I personally believe. So generally, if there is a free pattern, but there's a paid version of that pattern, I will generally get the free pattern and I will print it or save it to my computer. I'll turn it into a Word doc and put it on my computer and I will save it. But if the day comes that I ever actually make the free pattern and there's a paid version, I will go pay for that pattern. I think that's only fair. So I made many, many mistakes with this sleeve. Many mistakes. So what I did was I wrote them, instead of taking it out, I just wrote them down. Basically, the mistakes that I made were increasing in the wrong rows. Now, increasing in the wrong rows did not impact the size. That's just my personal crocheting and my gauge. I think that's just a gauge issue for me. That's why it came out a little too large. So that it is what it is. So I'm not going to worry about it. But the mistakes that I made, again, I increased the wrong rows. And first was that I just misread the pattern. It said to repeat rows 2 through 5, and then my brain read 1 through 5. So instead of, so when you do an increase in row 5, your next increase should have been row 9. And then your next increase should have been row 13. But mine were 5 and 10 and 15. Like I didn't pay attention. So my increases are different. They just happen in different places. They happen further up. But I still have 66 stitches total at the top of my sleeve. So making my increase rounds in the wrong places did not impact the size of the sleeve. But I do want my sleeves to be identical, or at least as identical as possible. So I wrote down all of my mistakes so that I can repeat them on the second sleeve. I'm not excited about the second sleeve. I'm not. But okay, I take it back. The only exciting thing about the sleeve is that once I make it, at least it's done. I did not enjoy working in turned rounds at all. Like not even a little bit. I'm personally not used to working in the round. I had never worked in turned rounds, and I did not enjoy the experience of working in turned rounds. I didn't like it. It's just, I mean, it's just slower. I had to use a lot more stitch markers, and part of it is my inexperience. It's my inexperience because when you're working in turned rounds, like I just had a lot of difficulty recognizing the first and last stitch, and keeping track of that. So I am going to, I think I'm going to watch just this video again before I start my second sleeve. Excuse me. I'm going to watch a video, and then I'm going to go ahead and start my second sleeve. I'm probably going to start it today, but I don't think I'll get very far. I think I just want to start it to get it started, to just have that foundation chain and those first few rows completed so that it's easy to pick up and sew. It's easier for me to just pick up and sew something that's already started than to pick it up and do the foundation chain and start. So I'll probably just take 20 minutes at some point today and just start that. But I don't think I'll work much more than that because I have some other things that I'm working on. But what I will do, when I do the other sleeve, and the reason I'm going to watch the video is just to pick up on any tips or tricks or anything that I might have missed that might help me in the construction of sleeve number 2. But I am going to make a video when I get kind of deep into the sleeve, maybe like at the halfway point of how I ended up using stitch markers because I just really struggled. I'm going to talk about some of my struggles with the sleeve, and I'm going to talk about the little things that I did to help manage the things that I struggled with. So I will come back when I am midway through sleeve number 2. Okay, so it is now March 12th. It has been a minute. I'm still not done with sleeve number 2, but I have made some progress. I am 37 rows in, and it's going. So I expected things to slow down. That's another reason why I didn't start. I mentioned I was not going to start a second crochet project because I did not want to distract from this. I wanted it to be that when I did crochet that this is what I picked up. And not get too involved in something else and put this on the back burner. Just knowing that quilting is my primary hobby and this is a secondary hobby, I didn't want to start another crochet project, and I have not. Primarily because I already had 3 quilting projects that I was starting on January 27th. I had a quilt along that was beginning, and I was sewing 2 quilts for that quilt along, in addition to a third project for a leader ender project. Anyway, so I was working on 3 quilts at once, and then also doing other small quilt projects. I did 4 coasters. I'm working on a panel quilt right now, or panel wall hanging right now. So I knew I had a lot of quilt projects going, which was going to slow down my crocheting or just limit the amount of time I had to crochet. So that's expected. But I am 37 rows in, like I said, and I am... Actually, I think I'm about to do row 37 is what that is. 30. 31, 32, 33, 34. Yeah, I'm about to do row 37. And I just wanted to give some tips for me, just things that I've been doing to try to keep this straight, because I had a lot of difficulty knowing which way to go with the turned rounds. And so basically what I ended up doing was this. Let me just go to this other camera here so you can see that closer. So here I am finishing a round, right? And so I know that when I'm finishing this round, since I'm going this way, when I turn it after I do the slip stitch here to join, and I turn it, I'm going to want to work over here. And so basically all I try to do is make sure that I have a red stitch marker here in the very first stitch. So when I complete, this would have been the first stitch to this round. And so when I complete that first stitch, I put a red stitch marker in there because I know that means that when I come back around, that's not the right way. Another thing I do is that if I'm stopping here, like if I'm not going to do another round and I'm just going to stop here, I don't do the slip stitch, because once I do the slip stitch, it becomes harder to know where to go. That's another thing that I do. If I don't want to do the stitch marker in the first stitch, I just did that anyway. But if I just want to know which way to go, again, when I do that first stitch, I put a red stitch marker in there so I know that on the next round, I'm going in the opposite direction. And another thing that I do is that I just don't do that slip stitch. So I'll just put any other color stitch marker here, and I'll just take the loop from my working yarn and I'll put it down here, and I'll throw in another stitch marker that will keep this from getting drawn into my work and me having to redo stitches. And then when it's time for me to go again, I just remove that. I put my needle in, or sorry, my hook. I remove this red stitch marker, and then oops, my yarn is on the wrong daggone side. I go ahead and do my slip stitch. Right? I can go ahead and chain 2. And then I don't want to lose this, so then I'll just go ahead and throw another color in here, just for now. And then I will turn. And then I'll start here. This is an increase row for me, so I'm going to put 2. Now this is the first stitch again, so where'd that red stitch marker go? I always get them lost in my work, or they fall on the floor. I don't know where it went. But anyway, since this is the first stitch of the row, what I would do is I would throw a red stitch marker in there, which I've lost mine already. And so I guess, I don't know, I'll just throw this orange one in here for now. I'll throw a red stitch marker in here, and then I'll know that that's the first stitch. And when I make the next row, I'm going to want to go in the opposite direction. And that's just kind of how I've been doing it, if that makes any sense. So yeah, so hopefully that helps, because I just missed a lot of stitches. Because the reason why some of the mistakes that I made making the first sleeve happened were I was trying to do a decrease, or trying to do an increase, excuse me, I'm trying to do an increase. And in trying to do that increase, I would miss a stitch in the row beneath it. Like I would be stitching into the second stitch instead of the first stitch, which will cause my stitch count to be off. Another thing that I do is I count stitches on every increase round. So to kind of keep me straight on every increase round, I go ahead and just count the stitches on that round. And that way, since I'm increasing every 3 rounds, if I make a mistake, I don't have to go back too far. So that's another thing that I've been doing. So that's been helping me. Hopefully that helps you. And I guess when I am done with this sleeve, don't know when that's going to be. When I'm done with this sleeve, I will come back and we'll talk about the next piece. So let's see how long that takes.
All right, so it is Sunday, March 17th, St. Patty's Day. I it's 11:14. I'm in bed. Adrian went fishing this morning, so he's not home. None of the kids are home. I'm home alone. I've got some laundry in the washing machine, and I decided to crochet a few rows before I get started on chores today. So I figure I'd do a little crocheting. When the washer's done, I'll throw it in the dryer, and then when the clothes come out the dryer, I'll stop crocheting for a bit and fold some laundry, get another load in the wash, do some chores. So it's going to be kind of just crochet and chores today. So I heard the washing machine stop while I was doing that last row. So I'm going to pause, go do some laundry, and because I forgot that I do have another load that I need to fold that's already washed and dried. So I'm going to fold the load that's already dried. I am going to take the clothes that are in the washer, put them in the dryer, and then I'm going to strip the bed and put those sheets in the washing machine. And when I get that done, I'll be able to crochet a little bit more, maybe, but probably not, because by the time I do that, the next load will probably be out the dryer. So it's probably going to be another hour before I get to do any more crocheting. So I'm going to pause here. And this is a good spot because I am at an increase row, I believe. Let's see. My increase row is going to be row 47 because of the mistakes that I've made. So this is row 40. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yep, I just finished row 46. Row 47 is going to be an increase row. So I'm just going to take my working loop and use a stitch marker and pin it to my yarn. Pin it to my project, because this is the way that I make sure that if it's a while before I get back to it, I don't end up doing something and frogging out my project, because I have done that before.
Okay, so today is Wednesday, March 27th, and I finally finished the sleeve, my second sleeve. I finally finished that on Saturday. It was just slow going for me in that sleeve. It really was. I need to go back and check and see when I started it versus how long it took me to finish the first sleeve and the second one. I'm curious. But yeah, the sleeve is done. On that same day, I started working on the collar. I got a few days in, probably 20 rows. So for the size collar that I'm making, I start out with a chain of 13 and then skip the first two chains and half double crochet into the remaining 11. So my first 7 rows only have 11 stitches in there. And then after that, every 4 rows grows by 1 stitch. So getting up to 20, say 11, 15, that means I only had like 13 stitches per row. And I realized at that point that I was not seeing any ribbing, so I probably made a mistake, which I did. Definitely made a mistake. I was crocheting into the wrong loop. You were supposed to crochet into the front loop only, and I was doing that incorrectly, and I was doing the wrong loop. I was actually doing the second loop instead of the front loop. I was doing the middle loop. And if you crochet into the middle loop, it looks just like if you crocheted into loops 2 and 3, which is what you normally do for half double crochet. If you are, when you are just normal crocheting under the 2 loops, those 2 loops would be loops 2 and 3. The front loop is in front of them. So it was all wrong. So since I had not gotten very far, I just went ahead and tore it all out. I just frogged everything because it really just wasn't that much. And then I just restarted and did it properly. I went back and watched the video to make sure that I did the stitch properly. And now things are looking good. Now for me, organization, memory, these things are issues for me. So trying to remember to make sure that I increase properly has, because it's really easy just going back and forth in these short rows, but just trying to remember that you increase properly is important. So I actually made myself a chart so I can cross off every row. I'm used to using Excel, so I made myself these little Excel charts that give me the row and how many stitches are in that row. So at any point, I can just count how many rows I've got and know if I should be increasing or not. That's just something that I'm doing. I'm also using this little row counter here. So when I finish a row, I just click that row counter. So I just kind of have like a double kind of check here for myself. Um, so, well, actually triple checks. I've got checks all over. Um, just so that I don't, if I do forget to increase, I don't go too far. And what I've been doing in addition to that and using the row counter. So, when I finish, the row counter gives the row that I've most recently finished. So right now this says 45. So, which is actually incorrect. I'm about to do row 45. This has too many, this got clicked too many times. I clicked it too many times. And so now I need to complete the number of rows that are up there so that it's accurate, or I could just reset it. But no, I'm not going to reset it and go back. I'm just going to leave it where it is and just finish those rows. So what I've been doing, the first thing that I did was on the first row, row 1, my right side row, was I put a red stitch marker there, right? Because I want to know what's my right side always. As a newer crocheter, these are just things that I'm not used to being able to easily see. I mean, although I've been crocheting for a long time, I've never done a garment before. I've only done like little crib-sized blankets for my kids and a hat and a scarf, right? So we're just working back and forth in rows. Like that's all I've done. And so for a project like that, these things don't really matter. None of this matters for a project like that, but it matters for this. So I've been trying to keep track. And so, whereas for a blanket, just a crib blanket, it wouldn't matter what's the right side. I wanted to make sure I remembered what was the right side. So I marked that straight away when I started. And then I've also been marking all of my increase rows. So with this green stitch marker. So with the green stitch marker, every time I'm doing an increase, I'm marking that row. And so you notice it's every 2. Well, this stitch marker is looking yellow, but it's not, it's green. So it's like every other ribbing, there's a stitch marker to indicate that that was an increase row. So if I were to get kind of far here, so like I did an increase row here, right? So this should have been an increase row, which it was. So I'm going to go ahead and put a stitch marker up there because that was an increase row. So I'm going to mark that. So if I was to like really get kind of whipping and realize that, I don't have an increase row every other ribbing, then I know that I need to go back and fix it. Another thing that I've been doing on the wrong side of the work is I've been marking every 10 rows. And it's really easy to count the 10 rows because it's every time you see a ribbing, that's 2 rows, right? So we have 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, and so I've got a pink stitch marker. And then 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, pink stitch marker, all the way up. And then it also helps me with gauge, right? Because every 4 rows, no, every 10 rows is 4 inches in this pattern. So when I get up to 40, I can bust out my measuring tape and see if I'm where I'm supposed to be gauge-wise and then make adjustments, right? Because it's kind of difficult for me to keep my tension consistent throughout this entire project. Like that's just kind of difficult. Different stitches, different time periods. I've been working on this now for going on, I think I started the January 3rd or something. So I'm going on 3 months. So April 3rd will be 3 months. So just trying to keep my attention consistent throughout this entire project has been difficult. So yeah, that's another thing. I'm able to kind of go in and check my gauge as I go along. And this just makes it easy because everything is already counted and I don't have to count anything. The only other stitch marker that I use, now when I was working the sleeve and turned rounds, I used multiple stitch markers per row. I use a stitch marker in the first stitch of every row, and I use a stitch marker in the last stitch of every row, and I use a stitch marker in the middle, which kind of kept me on track to make sure that I was doing the correct number of stitches. Since these rows are much shorter, And right now I'm like working with only 20 stitches per row. There's just no need for all of that. The hardest stitch to see is your last stitch. That's the hardest one. The last stitch in the row is the hardest one to see. So what I do is I put the first stitch in every row, I put a stitch marker in it, right? So right here, this would have been the first stitch in the row, right? As I'm, yeah, so this would have been the first stitch in the prior row. So I put a stitch marker in there. And then I did all my stitches across. And then when I got to the end, I chained two, I started my new row, and then after I started the new row, I put a stitch marker in the first stitch because the first stitch of this row will become the last stitch of the next row. So that's kind of what I've been doing. It makes it much, much easier to see this last stitch because even, the last stitch is always the hardest one to see. So that's kind of what I've been doing to keep myself on track. It's been great. It's been working great. Not had any issues keeping track. I haven't had to take very much out. Every once in a while, I'll do a row and be like, oh, dang it, that was supposed to be an increased row, and I'll have to pull that out and redo it. But at least it's just one row. So that's what I've been doing to keep myself on track. I've got a lot of rows left. I'm about to do row 44, I believe, and I have to get up to row 157. So once I get to row 80, I'll kind of be at the halfway point there. Well, not kind of, but I'll be at the halfway point there. So I was a little worried about the math because this works out to be 157 rows. But I guess that's 75 and 75 and 75 and then 7 rows worked evenly in the middle. So I guess that's how that works out. So I don't know. I've just kind of been enjoying this. I've been watching this grow. So I don't know. I feel like I don't want to be overly optimistic, but I feel like I might be, that's daggone fruit fly. I don't want to be overly optimistic, but I feel like I could potentially be done with this, but in a week, maybe a week from today. That'd be nice. Because once this is done, then we just have the pockets. I just have the pockets. And then once the pockets are done, then we can block and put it together. And I don't have to wait for the pockets done to start blocking. I can start blocking the other pieces. So, yeah, it's been interesting. It'll be interesting to wear something that I made that's not like just a scarf, like an actual garment. So this is getting exciting. This is getting exciting. I don't know when or if I'll make another wearable. I feel like I will. I'll make another one. I'm going to make another wearable. But right now, I just want to finish this. And then I think the next one that I start, I don't know. I might start right away. I'm not sure. There's a couple of projects that I've been looking at. One is a sweater made with bulky weight yarn. I do think my next garment will not be with DK weight yarn. Okay. The lighter weight the yarn, the more stitches you have. And honestly, I feel like crochet might make me lose some weight because I would be finished with this project if I was making a smaller size. I chose to make the 1X because I wear an XL. Like if I were to go buy an off the rack garment, I would buy an XL. I was afraid to make this in an XL because I was afraid that if I made it in an extra large, it might not fit or whatever. So I made it in a 1X. As it played with the dimensions of this as I'm crocheting it, I think I probably should have just made the extra large. But we'll see. We'll see. I guess since it's my first one, I choosing between making something too small that I can't fit and making something too big that's just a little loose, I chose to make something that was too big. Because at least I could still wear it as opposed to making something smaller. I don't know. But I've been looking at a lot of projects. One is the bulky sweater. One is a crochet snood, with I've been thinking about making one of those. Of course, I have all the yarn to make both of those. I've also been considering, I saw this pretty neat poncho that someone made the other day, and they used mandala yarn, which I have 3 skeins of, and you needed 2 skeins to make the project. And the project that I had purchased the mandala yarn to make, and mind you, this was pre-pandemic when I purchased this yarn for this pattern. So this was maybe 2018 when I purchased this yarn to make this pattern. And I haven't, but also in retrospect, looking at that pattern, it looks like it might be a bit more advanced. Um, it might and it might be a little frustrating for someone newer like me to put together. So I'm looking at alternatives to make with that yarn. Also, as a side note, I did finish when I was working on the sleeve. I did finish the skein that I was using. So now I don't have my whole thing with me. I think I finished 4 skeins. Completely finished 4 skeins. I'm using this skein and I have 2 unused skeins. Yeah, I think I started, and I can't remember if I started with 7 or 8, to be honest. It's been so long now. I don't remember how many skeins of yarn I started with, but I have finished, I think it's 4 complete skeins. I can't remember. I guess it's really not important, but I finished another skein. So um, those are kind of my milestones. So I got to have kind of 2 milestones pretty quickly back to back. One milestone was finishing a skein, and then shortly thereafter finishing the next sleeve. Although my stuff is different dye lots, because my yarn is from 2 different dye lots, excuse me, I have not noticed a tremendous amount of variation. I know that the 2 dye lots that I'm using right now are the same. So the skein that I finished and this skein, the new skein that I started were from the same dye lot, but some of the other skeins were not. And honestly, I didn't pay attention to that when I was doing it. I probably could have done things like doing the main body of the sweater, making sure that was all the same dye lot, and then maybe doing the arms. Yeah, I don't know, but I didn't even think about that. I just started grabbing skeins. And so I have them from 2 different dye lots. But they are so far looking like they go together fine, so I'm not going to worry about it. It's a homemade garment. It's going to have variations. So really excited to finish this and actually move on to the next project. So I feel like sometimes getting inspiration for other things kind of helps. It's kind of helping motivate me to get this one finished because I'm looking at the things that I get to do next. But I don't get to do anything until I am done with this project. I want this to be the only thing that I'm crocheting until this is completed. And then when this is complete, maybe I'll start 2 projects where I'll have something smaller, like maybe the snood or the poncho, and then maybe something larger like a blanket. But the blanket that I will be making will be with 7-weight yarn, so that would also be a quicker project than something using worsted weight or even bulky weight. So I don't know yet. We'll see what's next. Right now, I'm just excited about this. I'm really curious to see where I'm going to be by the weekend because I intend to spend a good bit of time working on this. It's getting exciting getting to the end. Working on the sleeve was drudgery. It really was. I did not enjoy that process, and I don't know if it's just that I like this better because I'm not working in the turned rounds. That makes it easier. Not needing as many stitch markers makes it easier. Being that each row is so short and you can just, you can do 3 rows back and forth of this compared to 1 row of the sleeve. So it's just kind of faster, and just to kind of see that progress is motivating. So I don't know. I'm excited about this. I'm going to work on this for another 30 minutes, like I said, and then see where I end up today.
So it is Tuesday, April 16th. Um, I haven't started work yet, so I wanted to get a couple of rows in. I'm still working on my daggone collar for the sweater. I am in the home stretch though. I used a crap ton of stitch markers on this thing, as you can see, because I used a stitch marker on every decrease row and every increase row, um, so that I would not get things confused. Um, as you can see, it's getting smaller, which means I'm in the home stretch, because we start out small and then we get big and then we get small again. So I made myself a handy dandy chart, a completely unnecessary chart, um, just so that I don't get the rows mixed up. I have found that this helps me. Um, Initially, I was using this and a row counter, but just found that this worked better. And I just kind of cross off after I complete a row. And I've just found it helpful because if I lose track, it was like, is this supposed to be a decrease row? Yes or no? I can just count my rows and then know where I'm supposed to be. And I actually just did that because I had missed something. And my combination of the stitch markers and the chart helped me know quickly that something was wrong. So I only had to take out one row. I don't know if I'll finish this collar today. It's technically possible. I don't have much left. But, I don't know. I don't know if I'm going to end up crocheting a lot today or not. I do have a busy day at work today, so I don't know if I'm going to be able to take like an hour lunch and get any crocheting done. So I might not be able to crochet until tonight before bed. Um, and if that's the case, I probably won't finish this. Once the collar is done, the only thing that I have left are 2 pieces of ribbing in 2 pockets. I am kind of motivated to get this collar done just because of where I am in the yarn skein. This is all I have left of my 5th skein of yarn. And it's just getting kind of difficult to work with. It is a cake, and usually cakes are center pull, but at some point this cake went from being center pull to being outer pull. And so I'm finding that I have to, take the skein out, wind some yarn off for me to use, and then set it back down, and I'm not able to just pull it like I have been. This is the first skein that's done that. The other 4 skeins that I've completed for this project, and this is a discontinued yarn, it's Lion brand Comfy Cotton, but the last 4 skeins that I used did not do that at all. They pulled perfectly for the entire skein. This is the first one that I'm having trouble with, but this is also the first skein that I found that had quite a few knots in it. There were like 3 knots that were like kind of all in a short span. But that's the only issue I've had with this yarn. Other than how soft it is, it's soft, and I'm just used to working with a tougher acrylic, and so this yarn is really soft, and so I can't crochet quickly with it. I can't crochet fast with it at all, because it's just softer yarn, and I'm not sure. I'm just not sure of it, so I don't know. We'll see. We'll see. Um, really excited to get this done. Really excited to be done with this skein of yarn. So I'm really going to try to take an hour lunch break today, because I feel like I can conceivably, like if I really just crack down and pay attention for an hour, I feel like I can get this done. Maybe I'm being unrealistic. Now I want to see if I'm being realistic about my crochet skill or speed. I want to see if I'm being realistic here. So now I think I might put a timer on. If I do get to do it, I think I might put a timer on. So yeah, that's going to be the challenge. I think I'm going to start work. If maybe I'll put some music on, and maybe if I can hyper focus at work today, I can get a lot done in the morning. And then if I can get a lot done in the morning, then I'll be able to take my full lunch hour and do some crochet. That'd be nice. That'd be nice. So yeah, let me get to it. I think I'm gonna do 2 more rows, and then it'll be time to go log in, and then we'll see how the day goes. Okay, so it is still
August 16th. I was able to get a break today. So I did finish my collar, but I left it upstairs. Hold on. So I know I said that I was going to time how long it took me to finish, but I completely forgot to do that. Like, just completely forgot. I was watching a video from Tony over at TL Yarn Crafts the other day, and she said nothing is more exciting than the beginning of your project and the end of your project. And I'm nearing the end of my project, and I'm not gonna lie, the excitement is starting to kick in. So here is my completed collar. It is quite long. And so what I have left are the ribbing for the pockets and the pockets themselves. So I have to do 2 pocket ribbings and 2 pockets. So of course, here's my first pocket ribbing. I did not time how long it took to do this either, but I know it was pretty quick because it's only like, it's tiny. It's like 16 rows and 7 stitches across, so it goes really, really quickly. I have to make 1 more of these. I don't see any reason why I won't get that made today. Then next are the pockets. The pockets each have 16 rows, and each row has 17 half double crochet in it. So that means each pocket will take about twice as long as the ribbing took, because the ribbing has 7 stitches across as opposed to 17, and it's 16 rows. So it'll take about twice as long to do the main pocket as it did to do the ribbing. But actually for me, it might go a little bit faster because I can crochet faster when I am crocheting into the normal spot where you crochet. For the ribbing, you are doing it in the front loop only or the third loop, depending on what people decide to call it. But some people call it the front loop, some people call it the third loop, but that's what I'm doing right now. And so I'm actually a little bit slower when I'm doing that. So I'm actually hoping the pockets go faster, stitch for stitch, than the ribbing. But I do think I can finish the ribbing relatively quickly. And I'm probably going to go ahead and just take a break now because I feel like, my lunch break is ending and I need to get back to work. And I know I'm going to have some time to crochet tonight. Adrian is going to go fishing when he gets off work. So, and the days are longer. So, he might not get home till like 8 o'clock tonight. So that'll give me plenty of time. He already cooked yesterday for the kids, so I don't have to worry about cooking them dinner. So I should be able to get in a solid, because then even once he gets home, he's got to put away all his fishing gear. He's going to have to shower. So I'm hoping I can get a solid 3 hours of crafting in today after work. At least 2 hours, maybe 3. And I'm expecting all of that to be crochet. I don't expect to do any quilting today because, like I said, I'm in the home stretch of this project. I did, to make my life easier, I took, since the ball of yarn was a bit, weird, I went ahead and just wound what was left into a ball, got all the tangles out to make my life easier. I don't think I'm going to use all of the yarn because I feel like I have 3 skeins of yarn left, and I feel like this project called for 7 skeins for the size that I'm making, and I'm not going to use 7 skeins of yarn because I have enough here left over. I have enough just here in ball number 5. I'm pretty sure. I'll double check and I'll update it in my next video, but I'll just go update it now. Okay, yeah, so I started out with 8 skeins of this yarn. And one of the reasons why I picked this project was because it used the exact same yarn that I already had. And I had 8 skeins of it, and it said I needed 7 skeins to complete this project. And so I was actually hoping to use 7 skeins. I really was. I really wanted to use all 7. Because then I would only have 1 skein left, or a skein and some change. And, it wouldn't be as much to work with. But it looks like I'm going to have 2 and some change left. Because, like I said, this is enough to finish my the next piece of ribbing that I have to do. And to make the 2 pockets and seam everything together is not going to take a full skein, because a skein is 392 yards. So I'm going to have quite a bit of yarn left. So when I'm done, I'm probably going to try to think of some other projects that I can make using this same yarn, and like maybe make some coordinates or something like that, because I really just want to get all 8 skeins of this yarn done. I want all this yarn done. So I might sprinkle in some smaller projects. I might find a pair of socks maybe that uses a DK weight yarn, and maybe make myself some socks to go with my sweater. Maybe make, because I get, in the wintertime, not so much now, but in the wintertime, because I work in a finished garage. It's a finished garage, but there's no carpeting in here. There's just like a vinyl floor. And so the floors get cold, and I do have HVAC down here, but my unit is up there, and you guys know heat rises. So like when I stand up, it might be warm, but when I'm sitting down, it can be kind of chilly because all the heat is kind of up there. So that's really what I'm going to use this sweater for. This sweater is going to be just my wear around the house sweater. I haven't decided yet, but I might decide to put some ribbing on the sweater. This is just what I have to tell. I don't know yet. This is just going to be, I have to see what I want to do after the sweater is done. But I've been thinking about adding some ribbing to the cuffs so that it's not so loose. I've been thinking about making some fingerless gloves, and, some socks would go with that as well. And then I have my whole little outfit. I don't know. Just wanted to give you guys a quick update. This video is getting really, really long. So yeah, I'm just gonna keep on. I probably won't update again until I'm completely done. So when all of my ribbing is done and my pockets are done, then I'll probably come back and update at that point to let you guys know where I am and what the date is. I don't know if I'll move directly to blocking. I'm not sure. We'll see. So I'll see you guys at the next update. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we have a completed cardigan. Now today, it took me a while to finish this video. Today is Saturday, September 28th, but I actually finished this cardigan on April 18th. So it did not take years. It took 3.5 months, and I'm really, really proud of what I made. I just never finished the video after I finished the cardigan. So I'm going to go ahead and put it on, and I'm going to go and just talk about, some mistakes, some best practices. Number one, although I did work to gauge, it did seem like I was getting gauge when I was making the cardigan. It did come out quite a bit larger than what I anticipated it to come out. And I think that's because of the weight of the yarn. So I actually could have made this probably one size smaller. So I am keeping that in mind, because when I did all my measurements, like when I'm laying the piece flat, it did seem right, but the sleeves definitely were, I guess I did not get gauge on the sleeves. I don't know. But so some lessons learned there. I did sew the collar on incorrectly, but I can't tell. Since this whole thing is made in half double crochet, I really can't tell right side from wrong side, so I can't tell. But I do believe I put the collar on the wrong side of the sweater, but I was just confused by the instructions of how to put it on. But nobody can tell. I can't tell, so there's that. I did change the pockets. So I don't know if you can tell, but the pockets have this ribbing right here. And this ribbing is here because these were supposed to be side pockets, right? But once I started, I realized I don't like side pockets. Stuff falls out of side pockets. I'd rather a top pocket. But I had already sewed one of the sides on, and so it was too late at that point. Well, it wasn't too late, but I just didn't feel like trying to find the yarn that I used to whip stitch the pocket on and try to take that yarn out. I thought that if I tried to do that, I would end up cutting some of the sweater yarn, and I didn't want to take that chance. So my ribbing is on the side, but my pockets enter from the top. I did have a malfunction here. I'll have to fix this. My pocket kind of came a little bit loose, so I'll have to stitch that back on. Because my sleeves came out so gigantic, I've been turning them up, just have it folded there because my sleeves are huge. So I did consider adding a couple of rows of ribbing to kind of cinch it, but instead I just decided to just roll them back. That's just what I chose to do. If I decide that this is something that I want to wear to work, I am going to be going back to my office the first week in November for 3 days a week. And it used to be cold in there. Now I've also gone through, or I'm experiencing the change of life these days. So I'm not quite as cold natured as I used to be. So I don't know, but I used to need a heater at work. I was always cold. I always had a sweater and a heater at work during the winter months. So, this is going to be my work sweater. When I go into the office, this is going to be what I bring with me. I'm going to leave this at work, and this is going to be my work sweater. So if I might decide before work to go ahead and add those ribbing layers. That way the sweater will be kind of nice and loose, but it'll kind of cinch here. Or, I might just decide to just just make a couple stitches and just stitch this thing closed, because it's my first sweater. This is not a it's not the most beautiful sweater in the world, okay? It's not like a statement piece. It's not a fancy garment. So yeah, I do really like how it came out. It's nice and long. I'm a short person too. I'm only 5'1". I used to be 5'2.5", but we shrink as we get older. But it does have a really nice length on it. It's got a really nice drape. I'm really happy with it. I don't know if I'll make another sweater in DK weight yarn. At least not in the near future. I do plan on making another sweater. But it will be a chunky sweater. I'll be using a size 5 yarn. I'll be using a size 5. Yeah, this is warm. This is a very warm sweater, which is why I'm going to try to use it for work. I'm hoping it'll be perfect for that, because that'll be a nice just place to keep it, kind of display it, show it, just to be able to see something that I've done, just to have something I've created at work. I think that'll be nice. I think I'll like that. So, yeah, that's my first sweater. So I really enjoyed the process. This was a very simple pattern. Literally the entire thing is made with half double crochet. So I thought that this was a really good choice for me for a first sweater. I could see making it again, potentially. I don't know if I will, because there are other patterns that I would like to make, but it was definitely an easy pattern. And having it be the same stitch throughout the entire thing really just took a lot of the guesswork out, because when you're making a garment, there's a lot of, there are increases and decreases. Normally I'm making an afghan or something like that, or a scarf. And my stuff is usually worked in turned rows, so I don't have a lot of, I don't have to deal with a lot of, increasing and decreasing and stuff like that. I'm just kind of working the same stitch pattern, whether it's a 1 row repeat, 2 row repeat, or a 3 or 4 row repeat, or whatever it is. But that's what I'm used to doing. And so with sweaters, there's a lot of increases and decreases. And one of the reasons I chose this pattern was because I didn't have to worry about stitches at all. It's literally just half double crochet across, except sometimes you do it in the back loop only to create ribbing, and sometimes you don't, and that's literally it. So I think it's a great pattern for making your first wearable, your first sweater, if you want to wear something. I will say for us plus size girlies, it's definitely more, right? Because it takes longer, there's more yarn. Like, I've never wanted to be an extra small in my entire life, except when I was making this sweater. Because I'd be like, God, if I was making an extra small, I'd be done already. But I have to make the 2X, for my 210 pound self. You know what I mean? So, only time in my life I ever wanted to be extra small. Like, I've never wanted to be a tiny person. I've never been a tiny person. So, and I've never, wanted to be a size 0 or a size 1, even like in my weight loss goals and trying to lose weight, I never aspired to be a size 0. But when I was making that sweater, every part of my body and brain and fingers and joints wished that I was making the extra small. So, my next pattern is going to be this chunky granny cardigan by MJ's Off the Hook Designs. I have seen some chunky patterns, and one of the ones I was looking at was the Kima Cardi by TL Yarn Crafts. I was looking at that one, but then I happened to see this chunky granny one, and I really like this because it's got a hood, right? It's made with chunky yarn and has a hood, and it's long, and it's a top down, right? It's top down, and so it's a different construction, and I had enough yarn for it, which is also a plus. And I've made a gauge swatch already. Where did it go? I made a gauge swatch just because I wanted to know. The gauge swatch is basically one of the pockets. And I made the gauge swatch because I wanted to make sure that I was going to like the yarn, the sweater in this yarn. And I do. I'm not so sure about these big granny holes though. So I'm not sure about that. I gotta think about that for a little bit. So I'm gonna watch the video a couple of more times. And look at some more pictures of the cardigan. I mean, and you can definitely tell it's definitely holy, it's a granny stitch. So it's definitely, this pattern is available for free on her website, MJ's Off the Hook Designs. However, when I decide to make a pattern that's free, I always pay for it. And the same with this cardigan. Again, this was the Up North cardigan. And although this was a free pattern on the Make and Do Crew website, which I will put a link to in the description, once I decided that I was going to make the sweater and I did a gauge swatch and I knew that I was making it, then I went ahead and purchased the pattern because I do believe in that. I do believe in, even if a pattern is available for free, if I decide to actually make it, I will, as long as I can afford it. And if I don't have the money, I don't have the money. But if I've got the, $5, $10 to buy the pattern, I will buy the pattern. And I knew that this was going to be the next sweater I was going to make. I watched the tutorial, and so I went ahead and paid for the pattern so that I could have, the full thing with all the dimensions and all that good stuff. So looking forward to starting on that. So anyway, that is it for me, and that is it for the Up North cardigan. Again, because it is heavy, I do not hang this up. I fold it and put it on shelves because I just don't want all that drag. It is a heavy, even though it's DK weight. I cannot imagine how heavy this puppy is going to be when it's done, but we shall see. Anyway, that was my experience with the Up North cardigan. I did enjoy this process. This is the very first garment I have ever made, and I want to say up until this point, this was the most yarn I've ever used in a project. I've made other projects before, but they were baby blankets or a sweater or a hat. This is definitely the most labor-intensive project that I've done crochet up until this point. Now, since then, I have made other things, but up until April 18th, this was the most yarn-intensive project that I've made, and definitely the longest crochet project that I have ever made. So that is it for me, and I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Like, comment, subscribe.